So anyway, today what we're talking about is Sanchin, and in particular the Kyokushin Sanchin kata, or the kata known as Sanchin. That's another really important point too. Some people call it Sanchin kata. That's not the name. The name of the kata is Sanchin. It's not Sanchin kata. The only kata that has the name that includes the word kata in the name is tsukino kata, because what that means is the punching kata. So without the kata, it becomes the punching. Tsukino kata, punching kata, this one, tsukino kata. But Sanchin is the kata known as Sanchin. Sanchin means 3 battles. Sanchin is a really interesting kata. And there's one thing which is very different about the way we do it compared to most traditional Okinawan styles. A lot of the Okinawan styles don't turn, right? They move forward and they move back. If you do Okinawan karate, you'll be familiar with that, in that they don't necessarily do the turn. I recall at some stage doing a live stream about Sanchin, and Shihan Mike Clark did make a mention that in some goju there is a turn in it. But here's the interesting thing. For me anyway, Sanchin represents a couple of really key points. And one point of really important value is the turn, because the way it teaches you what I call sticky tape. Okay, so sticky tape is getting as many connections, not just with my opponent's body, but with my own body. Okay, so here's the point. I have my arm here and Mitch grabs my arm and I try to pull it. Okay. Generally speaking, we might even do something like this, connect our hand and pull, and that gives us a strength. Sticky tape says that if I can connect my arm to my body and pull, it's a crazy difference. I pull my arm with no sticky tape. My arm isn't connected to my body. Okay? I connect my arm. So first of all, he's grabbing my arm, same strength, same everything. I open my hand and I either pull my hand to my body or pull my body to my hand. There. And now I pull and it just comes out. Well, this is the importance of the turn in the kata. And it's really, really important to remember that when we do that turn in the kata, my hand withdraws and I don't take the arm off. 0 sticky tape. I go here and I try to pull my arm and it's just 0. What I do in the kata is actually, look, I turn. I haven't even moved my hand yet. I've got my body and arm connected with sticky tape. And then I go to there. So it's like this. I build up the leverage against whatever's grabbing me. And then I get to here. And then I go back. So I'm in this position. Withdraw. Get to here. And across. So when I actually do it in the kata, 1, withdraw, there. See that movement? 1, and then I move across to there and out. 1, withdraw, sticky tape. Across, step, there. 1, withdraw, sticky tape, step across, point, unwind. So it takes the best of both worlds. You also have that uchi-uke connection for the Sanchin. That is really, really important, because what that does is it teaches that principle of sticky tape, and that is just so, so important. So here's the point. The first point I want to make anyway is that turn then becomes really important as a teaching tool. you need to learn to use sticky tape, especially when you're grappling. If I try to pull my arm out, if someone's got my arm, it's a principle of movement that has to become natural. If someone grabs you to try and pull, you're an idiot. Well, you're not. You just haven't practiced the technique enough. But what you'll learn is if someone grabs you, you connect your body and then pull. It's a big, big difference. And that's super, super important. Todd, everybody can read Todd's comment, and Todd's a Japanophile who knows his stuff, who lives in Japan, but different principles to Goju Sanchin, interested to know how that happened over time. Would you like me to tell you, Todd? This is why I'm doing that, because for a long time, and I'm sure Mitch will confirm, but for a long time, I've always believed that this turn is vital to the kata. And I couldn't work out why it wasn't in the traditional Goju kata. And I was just saying to Mitch before, I remember we did a podcast recently where Shihan Mike Clark, Sensei Mike Clark, I think he mentioned along the line that there were one or two Goju streams, organizations that still did the turn. And there's the key word there, still did the turn. But here's the interesting thing. There's a sensei named Toguchi Sensei. I quoted him in my book. I quoted one of his books, Okinawan Goju Ryu Karate. He wrote two books, Okinawan Goju Ryu Karate 1 and 2. I quoted 2, but I'd never read the book. What I quoted was an excerpt from the book that I'd found online. That was about Kaisai no Gendi. And it was his book that pointed out that Kaisai no Gendi, which is the kata training principle of bunkai, was originally called Toki to Musubi no Gendi. Musubi is like musubidachi, which means to tie together. When you tie a knot, when you tie your belt, obi o musubu in Japanese, obi o musubu, tie your belt. So you tie a knot. Toki means to untie or to unravel a knot. And in terms of the knot, K-N-O-T, being a point, take kata and start to get into bunkai, the entire thing is a knot tied up. You can say to people, what does that mean? They go, what are you even talking about? It's just a kata. Okay, so there's some people there who have no interest or intention of ever unraveling the knots of the kata. So originally, Kaisai no Gendi was called Toki to Musubi no Gendi, the unraveling and the tying. And that became really revelationary to me, because you have to unravel a technique and then retie it with sense. It makes sense. You can analyze any technique. So I say to Mitch, so throw a punch at me. He throws a punch and I pick it up, okay? And then I continue on. Now, the point of it is that movement, and just do the same punch for the sake of argument, there's my first block. So I'm doing an upper block, but I'm also doing uchiuke, but I'm also doing uchiuke this way, upper, uchiuke. So I'm putting all three together, and then from there, I'm capturing, going into Tencho Kata, locking, arm drag. Okay, so that technique, if we break it down, so now what we're doing, we have a technique. Now we're unraveling it. We're doing toku, the verb to unravel. So now let's unravel it. He throws that punch again. I'm coming up, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom. So we unravel it. So we can go, okay, what are we doing here? Instead of it just being this blur of things falling into each other, we pull it apart and go, the first thing you've got to do is, a bit quicker. There. First thing I've got to do is cover my nut. I don't know what he's going to do. He could do anything. Okay, punch comes up, I cover. Okay, 2, 3. I need to get that in order. Cover, change angles, strong, sticky tape. Okay, if I pull him with one arm, it's not going to work. So I need to sticky tape. I need to bend my knees and pull. That's how this gi tore. Just
too much power.
Too much power.
Seams couldn't handle it.
Yeah, the seams just fell apart. So even in there, and every technique you do, basically it is an unraveling and a retying. So we pull it apart, and you can just practice one part of that drill. It may be that you just practice over and over. And when you get that, now you practice this. Now you practice this. Then you practice that. And you put it all back together and bang, it just works. Well, this is what Tokito Musubi no Geni means, untying and retying of the knot. It's not just untying and tying. I came to the realization that it's actually you're untying and you're retying it with clarity. That's the big difference. Now, I was referring to Toguchi Sensei's book. It's a very famous book. Same with other katas as well. Yeah, originally taken from Goju and Jodo, kind of changed drastically. Yeah, but here's the interesting thing. This is what I wanted to talk about, Todd. In this book by Toguchi Sensei, now Toguchi Sensei has serious cred. He has the lineage. He's either a direct student of Miyagi Chojun or a student of Miyagi Chojun's student. So he's either a deshi or a mago deshi of Miyagi Chojun. And there are some numerous photos of him in a very select group with Miyagi Chojun and so on. So he's highly respected and highly recognized in the Goju world. Now, I had quoted his book in relation to Tokito Musubi no Gendi or Kaisai no Gendi, and I couldn't get a copy of the book. It was hard to get. I finally got a copy of the book, and I'm reading it, and here's what it said, Todd. This is what I find really interesting. He actually said that originally the Goju kata included 2 turns, just like Kyokushin. And that makes sense to me because Sosai learned it from Soneichu, who was an original student as well. He was that first generation student. So Sosai had no reason to change it. And Sosai says when you come up with koken, it's on your ring finger, but when you go to the side, it's on your middle finger. That sort of clarity only comes from experience. So Sosai is not going to take it out if he recognized the value of it, and he did. Okay, so Toguchi Sensei, who's either a direct student, I have to double check, or a second generation student of Miyagi Chojun, actually says that originally the kata, as it was done in Goju, contained the turns. The only reason they cut it out was because at some stage, some student came into the dojo and said, when we turn, we shouldn't turn because it's turning our back to the instructor. It's turning our back to Miyagi Sensei. So we shouldn't turn our back. So let's just do the shortened version, do everything, but we'll do it without the turn. That's quite interesting.
Very.
In other words, what's happened is somewhere along the line, someone's just come in one day and said, let's not turn today because that's rude. We don't want to turn our back to our instructor. And it stuck. And it became the way it's done in many, many Goju schools. Okay? I find that really fascinating. That Toguchi Sensei said, no, originally it had the turns. So, and I've always, deep respect for all styles of karate, all legit styles of karate, and that is especially Goju. They did it that way. I didn't question it, but deep in my mind, I always believed that turn was extremely, extremely important because that teaches you the sticky tape, the concept of leverage. Sticky tape, when I say sticky tape, leverage is more and more of my body against less and less of his. That's all I mean by leverage. Okay, so I found that really, really valuable and very interesting. Yes, he was a direct student. There you go. Thanks, Toddy. That cleared that up. Good on you, Toddy. But I mean, I'd be interested I'll find the reference, Todd, and you can look that up too. But I'd love to get a copy of that. Okay, so I think that's one of the most, Rob, thanks. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you too. One of the most important key points of Sanchin. Not only the point that we have the turn in the kata, but also how the turn is done so that you have the sticky tape. The body, the arm does not come off the body. This is the way it's being taught. And I guess if you learn it from a book, or even sometimes when you're teaching it, I imagine 30, 40, 50 years ago when guys were teaching it, they just go, yeah, just put your hand here. Put your hand there. So there's no explanation of why. I always describe it as wiping mud off your arm. It's like you're wiping something off your arm like this. You probably heard me say that.
A million times. Can I ask you a question on?
Yes.
Do you think, I'm just wondering, because something you talk about so much is stress testing against non-compliant opponents.
Yes.
And it's something you've done forever and encourage us to do forever. I'm wondering how the elbow comes away from the body during the turn. Could it be that maybe in generations before or recently, sometimes and maybe not stress testing in different ranges of combat? So maybe, could that be, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, 100%. But also going back to that quote, a block is a lock, as a blow is a throw. It may well be that they weren't thinking in terms of the grab. But generally speaking, for the rules of kata, when your hand is on your body, it indicates that you are pulling or breaking balance. Okay, so I don't think that's the case. I think you're spot on. I think that it's got to the point where people don't stress test it. They don't even question it. There were years and years and years where people didn't even ask what the bunkai application of a kata was. They would just make it up, and if it suited, great. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. But it may well be that it's working on this idea that this hand actually pulls someone in. So now the interpretation may be, I'm going to have to ask you, normally I don't ask people to throw I don't like to say to guys.
Yeah, you've never said it before. This is first time that I've experienced him say, throw this punch.
Yeah,
ever.
I hate that.
Yeah.
When guys go, no, this is really, really good. You can block anything. Throw that hand to my, it's like anybody can do that. But just for the sake of illustration, I need him to throw the right. So he throws the right. Now here I am in the kata. Look, I'm in the kata here. So it may well be that he throws the right. I come in here, and now this movement is no longer breaking out. Maybe it's a punch into the ribs like that. It's a lateral turn, a bit of a turn. I'm only turning because in the kata it turns. The reality is you can keep it upright or even rip it in like that. So it very may well be that. Or here like this, maybe he grabs my shoulder here with that hand. Boom. Here, there like that. So now we grab 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3. So you got that as well. It also could very well be he grabs again or punches again. This movement now becomes an elbow break or an elbow dislocation. Maybe you wouldn't break it, but you might tweak it. So without trying to minimize people's lack of attention to what they're doing in a kata, it may well be that they're going beyond what I'm thinking and actually thinking in terms of it being a strike. But it doesn't make sense to me to do it that way. That's another application. That's a good question that made me think of it that then. But here, I think that connection to the body, turning the body, is the key point to that turn because you're turning that way into it again. So that's why I would add to that. Yeah, thanks. That'd be good, Harry. I'm tracking these guys down, all these plagiarists. No, it's probably the number one quote, which I actually wish that I put copyright Cameron Quinn, is a black belt is a white belt who never gave up, which was from my original book and my original research back in the 80s. And even that, my original source of that is Yogananda. As you know, I follow the teachings of Yogananda. And Yogananda said a saint is a sinner who never gave up. And I thought that fits perfectly into karate. So I re-quoted it as a black belt is a white belt who never gave up. This all relates to the principle my old BJJ teacher showed me, where he would break grips by grabbing his own gi near the opponent's grip and move his body to break the grip. Yeah, 100%. I use that sometimes if, for example, Mitch is, see if we can replicate that, Craig, but Mitch is going to he's going to go from seat belt, actually I'll do it, go from seat belt, open, called Okuri Eri Jime, okay? I get my grip here, grab the other lapel, now this one pulls straight down, this one pulls across. One of the ways that you can get out of this is Mitch takes both of his hands to the gi below my hand. Yes, no, the other one. Yes, there. See that? And he gets that gi and he rips it towards my little finger. Rips the gi open.
That way?
Boom. Yeah. Towards a little finger like that, and then turns my head in. That's a really good way to reduce the threat of that sort of choke too. So that's a really good point. There are lots of places like that, Craig, that's a really good point. And that's just leverage. A white belt is a black belt who never gave up. Yeah, there's that too, I guess, Harry. They get their black belt, then 30 years later, they go back to training. They go back as a white belt. Now, then another area which I really love about Sanchin is posture. One thing Sosai said to me once, he said, you can generally tell a martial artist by their posture. He said, kendo players and karate guys have good, beautiful, straight posture because the nature of the game is a posture game. Whereas judo guys and grapplers, wrestlers and judo guys are more bent over because that's the nature of their game. And I found that very interesting. But Mitch pointed something out. Remember, what were you saying about the nature of common day postural changes as a result of lack of attention, perhaps?
Yeah, and just general training. So generally, if you look around, you go to a barbecue or just in life every day, people will stand with their feet externally rotated more and more and further apart as they get older or have done more training. So just as an example, they might, generally speaking, they'll usually stand wider apart and feet externally rotated as they've done more and more training, more running sports, more squatting, whatever it happens to be, more karate training. And posturally as well, in the upper body, it's very common people that have done a lot of internal rotation, for example, boxing or a lot of weight training and the imbalances that happen in life, our knuckles will be in. So we'll stand with our feet out generally and our palms in. And then if I stand side on, just the weight of life as well from people, weighing on them. Our posture's determined by a connective tissue tension, but it's also determined by our thoughts and the challenges and opportunities we've had.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Go back to the side again and see this posture.
The round one.
Next time you're driving in a car, feel your posture.
Yeah.
Do exactly this.
Yeah.
And you end up like this.
That's right.
And it places tremendous stress on your neck. So if you find yourself doing that, what would you do to fix that?
Well, chin in position and straighten the spine.
Yes.
So that's the two things. And the beautiful thing about Sanchin is it reverses all of that. So we come here, our feet are internally rotated in the Sanchin stance. We're what we call in thin tummy, tight cheek. So we're basically posteriorly rotating our pelvis. Then we're externally rotated with the arms. So instead of being internally rotated, we're doing the exact opposite. We're externally rotating. And from a side-on position, our chin is in. We've got a straight chin in. So our what do you call it, Xian? The back, our kinetic chain,
yes,
so to speak, is
power chain.
Power chain is square. It's locked in straight. It's a really powerful position, and it literally reverses all the typical stimulus that we get in life from training. And if you're not sure about this, just go look at a footy team or a hockey team or something when they're standing there. You'll see this. You can count the knuckles on the front of the hands, in your own posture looking in the mirror. And Sanchin, temporarily anyway, for as long as the Kata, tends to reverse a little bit of that, which is a great stimulus to give the body regularly. And then the scapular retraction with the headbutt, grabbing the lapel and then pulling in, that's a nice scapular retraction. Yes, it's not exactly against gravity, I understand, but it's a nice thing to do to open up the shoulders and squeeze the upper back because most people are like this.
And this is really interesting. If I could add something there, Sosai's 3 kata points. Waza no kankyu iki no chosei chikara no kyojaku. If you read Funakoshi's Karate do Kyohan, or the master text, he talks about the 3 points, but one of his points actually says the contraction and expansion of the body, which Sosai said iki no chosei, or the breath control. Contraction and expansion of the body is very intimately related to the breath. But exactly what Mitch was saying there, if you stand up and do that again, I reckon what I used to do to teach the students when I was training was, the uchideshi mainly was, you remember I used to take my shirt off and I'd say, put your fingers between the shoulder blades. So right now when he's in Sanchin position, there's a slight connection between the shoulder blades. Now he does the headbutt retraction, extend, yes. And see, now my fingers hardly even can fit between the shoulder blades. So do it really slowly, because then you've got the expansion of the body. See that? His whole body is flat there. Turn around this way. Then when he does the scapular retraction, look, my fingers disappear between his shoulder blades. That's such a really valuable point. So Mitch, Mitch as an athletic conditioning preparation coach is, if you ever do any training with him, you want to do some weights, don't be surprised if you spend the first 2 weeks doing nothing but fixing posture, because postural misalignment is one of the big problems in the world today.
Oh, it's enormous. And what you just said about the scapulars being square and retracted is enormous. We can go chin in, chest up, squeeze the shoulder blades, and that immediately changes the shape of our shoulder blades, our alignment there. So, yeah, it's just, and Sanchin's a beautiful kata for that. It's just wonderful, apart from everything else you've talked about.
Yeah, and so I think they're key points. Some are universal to even goju, or to styles that don't do the turn. But this is one reason why, and I learned this from Shihan Bobby Lowe, who told me once that even when he is sick, he tries to do the Tensho, Sanchin and Tensho at least once a day. Even when he was sick, he said sometimes he was so sick couldn't get out of bed, he does it in his imagination. Okay, and for our New Year's, our January 1st celebration, we went down to the beach at dawn, and we did 100 kata on the beach. The weather's shocking. There's a cyclone off the coast.
Yeah.
So it was like...
Got a bit wet.
Yeah. But the energy and vibration of just being there on that beach, and it's just out of this world. And we finished off with 10 Sanchin and 10 Tensho kata. And if you find yourself a victim of postural unattention, that's all it is. It's postural unawareness, where your feet are turning out, you're forward rotating, so you're showing your knuckles like this. Do enough Sanchin so you become conscious of that movement, and then carry that movement forward. The other thing too is when you drive, you rest on the steering wheel and your neck goes forward. You have a look around. You look at people in the car next to you at a traffic light, and they're all like this. Okay, so the best thing to do is, what I'm always trying to do is take the chin back. I call it the 3 concaves. This is something I haven't really discussed with you perhaps, but if I was to talk about it, you would be conscious of it. I call the 3 concaves. There are 3 primary concaves in the body. The first one is the perineal concave, between the legs. The second one is a diaphragmatic concave. And then the third one is the chin. And one of the things that we tend to do is,
that's right,
we lose the concaves and the posture. But if you think in terms of perineal elevation, which from speaking to Mitch, he describes as thin tummy, tight cheeks. Then you think of diaphragmatic concave. So you've got to fix the diaphragm. So you elevate the diaphragm, and that extends the thoracic vertebrae. And then you you lose the concave. You fix the chin concave here, and that'll fix your cervical vertebrae. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. That chin out position is an enormous one that gets people. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just think it's a wonderful kata for that reason in particular.
Really, we need to give this kata huge credit, but I've always had that problem of trying to understand why some kata didn't do the turn, some did. And then Toguchi Sensei, a direct student of Miyagi Chojun, made it all very clear. He said one day, one of the senpai came in and said, no, we're not going to turn around today because it's rude to show our back to the instructor, which is very Japanese, of course. I mean, even with Sosai, when you leave Sosai's office, you would never turn your back. There'd be Sosai, you'd bow to Sosai, and you'd back out of the room, and then at the door, you'd bow, and then you wouldn't turn your back until you were out of the room and out of sight. So that's a very common thing to show respect like that. I just noticed the other month how Sanchin activates the musculoskeletal facial slings. Can Mitch comment? I'm not sure what a facial sling is. Can you give us more info on that?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you mean.
Craig, yeah, give us a little
Craig,
more.
But to just on a broader question, I couldn't agree more. Because so many people stand, just use your hips and the lateral tissues of the legs, for example. So many people stand externally rotated. The femur hangs in the acetabulum of the hip, in a funny externally rotated position so often that by just simply turning the feet in, I mean, just as an experiment, if you get people to stand with their feet close together, as an example, or turned in, and they do it for a couple of minutes, it can be a real challenge. So that's going to definitely, the connective tissues, the fascia and so on, it's going to stress them quite enough. It's going to stir them up. It's going to wake them up. So if that's what you're meaning by it, I absolutely agree. But if I've missed the mark, let me know.
Yeah, I actually had one of my work colleagues who asked me because I'd helped her with her posture. And she said, could I help her with her son? He was a competitive athlete, but he suffered from a modern day misunderstanding, and his coach through his entire school life didn't believe in stretching. They said it was a bad thing. So this kid, I meet him, he's incredibly athletic. He's a big, strong lad, been a competitive rower his whole life, super strong. He couldn't even stand straight. He was like this because he'd spent so much time pulling. But it had got to the point where his pulling motion was so incorrect because his coach had misinformed them, that she said, can I help him? So I went through a series of musculoskeletal adjustments, and it was impossible. It had got to the point where certain muscles around his pelvis had so shortened,
Locked up, yeah.
that I actually spoke to her 6 months later. He had to have an operation, and what the doctors did was snip some of his muscles and somehow lengthen them that way, like taking tissue from somewhere else in the body or something like this, or just snip them and left. It's just insane.
Yeah.
It's
amazing the way our body adapts to the stimulus that we give it, whether it's a positive or a not so positive stimulus. Our body is so adaptable. It's incredible, and that's a good example.
Yeah.
And a negative.
That's the sum total of where we're heading with Sanchin today. I just wanted to say that I have nothing but respect for Goju, but for some reason I always thought they got it wrong when they didn't turn, because for me that turn was one of the key parts of the kata. And then Toguchi Sensei, direct student Miyagi Chojun, pointed out that in actual fact it was always done with the turn until one day they decided not to turn because they didn't want to turn their back on the teacher. Not a very good reason. I mean, understandable, but I don't think that's a good reason to cut it out of the kata forever. And I'm just not too sure how many people who do Sanchin without the turn realize that the only reason the turn's not there is because somewhere, someday, someone said, we shouldn't turn our back on our teacher. If the teacher's there, don't turn your back. But when you're down the beach doing it, turn your back. Of course, I need to chat with Mitch to brain dump and absorb his knowledge.
I think Craig's being humble. Probably the reverse.
Yeah,
I think it's the reverse.
So thanks, guys. Look, Happy New Year. I've been overwhelmingly crushed with so many things. Christmas was meant to be a time of leisure and rest, and I just got overwhelmed with family things going on and things like that. So I'm a little bit behind. But listen, everybody, thank you for coming along. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Rochelle. You're always very loyal, and you're always very present. So thank you for that. Thanks, everybody. I hope that you find that interesting. Have faith in the Kyokushin style of Sanchin, because that turn and the connection to the body is really, really valuable. Us, Mitch, always appreciate your input.
Absolute honour. Thank you.
It's always great to have Mitch. Well, I hate it, of course, because people want Mitch more than me. But anyway, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Daniel. Good to see you. And Harry, good on you. Thanks. Sukanta, namaste, shukriya. Thank you very much, Sukanta ji. And everybody, look forward to seeing you again real soon, next week. And if you've got any questions, make sure you put them underneath the video. Good to see you, Doug. I appreciate you coming. Joel, thanks, gents. Good on you, lads. Us. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Us, Bill, good to see you. Thank you very much, everybody. Cheers, Mitch.
Us, thank you.
Us.